Hi, I'm Elaine Brewster, and welcome to Aspects of Energy, a forum where we talk about ways to raise our energy. Today, we have a really important topic, and that is the idea of nursing that has now enlarged and increased to include natural things from the earth, things that we should be getting from the earth that we're just not getting as much nowadays. And so to guide us through that is Dee Welsh. I'd like her to tell a little bit about her background and why she went into nursing, and and her story, and how she was led from one thing to another. So we'll just listen to you for a while, Dee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Elaine. And so I'm Dee Welsh, and I live in a suburb of Chicago. And I went into nursing. Boy, I think there's a few reasons. One is, of course, the desire to help people. And 100 years ago, when I was in high school, so many friends either went into business, office type thing, teaching, or nursing. And nursing seemed the most appealing. There are so many more avenues that folks go into now, of course, and so many more options. But even as a kid, on wash day, when my mom had the ringer type washer, and you either hung in the basement in the winter or out on the clothesline in the summer, and standing on the concrete where the washing machine is, her legs would be very tired and sore at the end of Monday wash day. And so she would ask either my sister or I if we would just rub her legs and feet with alcohol. And she would call us her little nurses. And ironically, both my sister and I ended up going into nursing. So, the seeds that get planted, who knows, right? But so that was just a very interesting 3-year diploma program. Learned so much. Some of those classmates I still see. We're still friends and gather from 4 states several times a year. But so I worked on a surgical floor. It was a big teaching hospital where I trained. Worked on a surgical floor, and then was head nurse of that 42-bed unit, and until I got married and moved away, and then did med surg, all of that, and I ended up having 5 children pretty close together. And so those years, I didn't work other than a period of time when I worked in intensive care. And then later on, I ended up working in doctor's offices, did some private duty, that type thing. And then the last 22 years that I was working in the field, medically related, I was working in the workers' comp arena, which is really like a sports injury type injury. People are typically well working on their job, and they have some kind of an accident. And the nurses would get the more difficult cases, people who would be getting surgeries or be off work for a long time, that type thing. And then I was supervisor of some of the nurses as well for a time, until I had a chance to go back out into the field, which I liked the best, because you were interacting with the patients, with the doctors live. You weren't doing everything by phone in a cubicle. And so I saw a lot of folks struggling with a lot of issues from their injuries. And of course, many of them did very well with the treatments they were given, possibly surgery, medications, that type thing. And yet many had multiple surgeries, many medications, often would spiral downward, not just physically, but emotionally in other ways. So when a friend asked if she could tell me what she had just been introduced to, she knew I was a nurse, but that was about it. And she figured I'd be interested in health and wellness. I said, sure. I trusted her. We'd gone through a spiritual direction training program together. I had a lot of respect for her and knew her quite well. And so when I was introduced, they told a little bit about the company, did a strength and balance test, which many of you have experienced, if not live, at some point, hope you get to, who will be listening to this, and had me drink my tap water and then had me have a drink of the Nikken Mag water. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a difference that was. So what my friend and her friends who came with her to even who were in Nikken a little bit longer, and told me a little bit about the company and the 5 pillars of health, healthy body, healthy mind, healthy family, healthy society, healthy finances. And that, that was foundational philosophy of the company, to be working toward balance in those areas, and humans being more, that we can continue to grow and develop and become more as we go on in life. And that all of that just resonated with me, with not just my nursing background, because we were really taught about the patient as far as body, mind, and spirit. We were taught to not just be aware of their body, but what they were going through psychologically, emotionally, spirit wise, and also their family members that we may be in contact with. And certainly from the spiritual direction background, that was all part of it too. So it really resonated with me, that this would be foundational philosophies to a business or a secular type company. And what my friend didn't know is that I had ongoing back issues, neck, upper back, mid back, low back, all kind of discomforts daily, spasms, numbness down in my knee, from an old car accident that I'd had when I was in my mid 30s, and also had trouble sleeping for 15 or 20 years. So when they talked about clean water, to this system that could eliminate the toxins in the water, at least most of them, put the minerals back in, make the water alkaline. I already tasted it, so I knew it tasted great. Clean air, to get rid of the contaminants or a lot of the particles that are off-gassing from our furniture, our carpeting, our paints, all of that in our home. And then, the cleaning products and personal care products and all of that enters into our home environment, which is worse, they have found out, than an outdoor environment as far as pollution wise. The idea of good sleep, that using these technologies from the earth, sun, and air as part of a sleep system to help put our body into a restful, restorative sleep. Nutritional products that were organic or whole food or organic as possible based. There were a few pieces of jewelry then. I know there was a bracelet. I'm not sure what else at that time. This was 13 years ago. And I thought, that all just made so much sense. The idea of a wellness home environment where you're really cocooned in the environment that you're in most of the time of your day and night, or if you're working, some of these things could be used in the office or just taken with you to use, to help put your body in balance in a natural way, made so much sense to me. And because I'd already seen what our Western medicine model used for treatments, And can't be beat when it comes to emergency medicine and trauma and so many things. But I don't know that we do as well when it comes to chronic things like this ongoing discomfort that I'd had for 20 years, and poor sleep and everything else. And also, do we do so well with prevention? I think maybe now there's more focus on it because I think the populace is more knowledgeable and also asking for it. But while the doctors may recommend, diet, exercise, that type thing, unless you go in with a sleep problem, when's the last time a doctor asked, how do you sleep? Or how much water do you drink? Are you getting good hydration? Those are often not questions that are even talked about unless the patient brings it up. So I also like the idea of things being simple, non-invasive, non-chemical, that you could use as a self-care thing as you chose to use them. That you didn't have to go to somebody and get permission to do something for your health. That we are empowered to really take care of ourselves in all kinds of ways, in all the choices we make in life. And so I did not plan to do it as a business, but I did remember that they mentioned something about tax benefits if somebody was doing it as a business. And actually, I went to Humans Being More, which was coming up just a few weeks after I was introduced to this. And that also resonated with me because of some of the other things I'd experienced either in the spiritual direction training or on retreats and that type thing.
Can you tell us what that is, Dee? Humans Being More. What is that?
Yes, Humans Being More is now it's a 4-hour typically Zoom event. At that time, it used to be a 2-day live event where it's put on by the company, where you're introduced to the 5 pillars of health, and it helps you take a look at your life in those key areas particularly, and look at where you are now and where you want to maybe move toward, and see where you are on balancing those. Because always our first way of making changes is an awareness first of where we are, right? And so that was just a wonderful event. And then it was after a larger regional event that I decided to become a consultant because I wanted to get everything. I wanted to start my wellness home because I was urgent to feel better. I wanted to get rid of this discomfort. I wanted to sleep better. The philosophy and the ways of doing that through the products made sense to me, as I've said. So I got everything. I started using everything right away, except the sleep system came a couple of weeks later. So I'd already been drinking the PyMag water, I'd using the insoles, the MagFlex for my back, the bracelets, some of the nutritionals. So I was well hydrated already because the water tasted so good. That was pretty much all I was drinking. I was well hydrated before I ever got on the sleep system. And people had said, sometimes people might have an increase of discomfort when they start using some of the magnetic technologies because their body really is detoxing. And so the best thing they can do is drink a lot of water to help flush that on through and just sort of move through it. But I had no problems at all. And the first night I fell asleep right away, which was so unusual for me. Usually it was hours before I could fall asleep. I woke up before the alarm went off, had slept all night thinking, oh my God, this is what a good night's sleep feels like. And it was just like, you know, we know now sleep is so foundational to health. It's more important than exercise, nutrition, heredity, all of that. So much goes on in our body as far as restoring itself and our brain and everything else, our immunity while we're getting deep sleep. So that just made all the difference of the world. And that has continued, thank God. So
Good.
I also, about a year after I started, the Bone Health Pack came out and I started utilizing that as well. And I'd already had bone density issues. And maybe 8 or 9 months later, I had another bone scan after I started using the products for bones to help the bone health. And that was back in the normal range. And it had not been normal for years. And I also knew there were no side effects to that. So that was so important to me. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? I think one thing is, you know, people are always wondering, okay, how much does this cost or how much is that or whatever. To me, the difference in how I feel now and how I felt prior is priceless, the improvement. And it is just like we, have expenditures with our homes or cars, whether it's a car payment or a mortgage or utilities or upkeep or whatever. We can pretty much count on monthly expenses in those areas of life. Well, our bodies are really most precious thing that we have. And to invest in that, to keep it as healthy as possible and have the energy and vitality to really participate in life because you feel good is priceless to me. And to be ill, to be sick, to be not well is so expensive. It's not just the medical cost, it's the lack of vitality, it's the lack of being able to participate in things that you want to participate with family, friends, other interests, even during the last 18 months where people have been more confined. It's to have the energy to tap into other things that we're able to tap into and enjoy them versus trying to recover because we're not well is still a difference in quality of life.
Well, unlike excuse me, a friend of ours, Kimball Sargent, said, I think it's sad to think how many people nowadays think that being ill is how you're supposed to be.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
we ought to be healthy. We ought to be able to participate, like you said. I like that.
Well, and I think, we've heard, when our bodies are given the environment that supports us in all these ways that we've been talking about, just like a plant in a greenhouse, when it's given the optimal environment, the plant thrives.
Mm.
And so do we. And there are instances where that may not happen as well, granted, but for the most part, our bodies want to function well. They want to heal. So, for an instance, if you break a bone, it may be casted or splintered or whatever. The cast or splint doesn't do the healing. That just keeps it in alignment so the body can heal that fracture. And it's the same. So our bodies want to move toward wellness. And so to give it the support they need, especially when our environment is not pure, when our water, our food, our air, and so many things are, I'm going to say contaminated, but have things in them that are not good for us.
Well, polluted.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I think the I guess I would say if somebody is taking a look at this, to not be afraid of it.
Mm.
You know, they're really, if somebody starts with one or two or three things or whatever they could manage, if they chose to try some things, it is not a big investment. And there really isn't anything to lose by trying it. But I also know too that, you know, if you have, say, a sore back for 30 years, 15 minutes often is not going to take that away. For some people, it has. It's almost seems miraculous, but it may take hours or days or even longer to feel better. I remember hearing the story from someone. He was looking at surgery, and somebody said, you know, before you do that, you ought to try the sleep system. It could help. You never know. It could help. So he was on it one or two nights, and he said, I don't know, my back's still hurting. This isn't working. His wife said, we're keeping it. It's the first time in 10 years you didn't snore. Now, we don't know. We can't say that's going to happen to everyone, of course. But for him, it did. And eventually, it took him several weeks before his back started feeling better. And all of a sudden, he could get up in the morning and not reach for his cane. He could just start walking. So we don't know how it's something's going to help or when it will, but it is it's nothing to be afraid of, I guess I would say.
Dee, what do you see for the future in medicine or integrative, or what would you like to see? And then we've got,
Oh boy, I know there are more, and most of this I've seen from things online, more medical professionals, doctors, nurses who are looking into or working in more of an integrative way of dealing with patients, treating patients, or a functional medicine kind of model where they're looking at root causes of things versus just the symptom. Because often the symptom is being treated typically, and not, oh, I am so sorry. Let me go.
while she's doing that, it reminds me of a section in my book. It turns out it'll be coming out in mid-January now, but we came back from Mexico from treatment, and my husband's lung needed to be drained. So we were at our local hospital, and all they could see is a man that looked like he was dying. That isn't why we'd come back. We, according to what he asked me, we had come back to work, and we had the things, the thalidomide and the enzymes and cobra venom, and we had all kinds of things that we had brought with us from Mexico to work. We just needed the lung drained. I can't do that myself. And so they've got him on morphine, and he's over there, you know, happy in morphine land. And so I'm dealing with all of these people who are coming in and out, talking about insurance and swing benefits and and all of this stuff that I don't know what they're talking about. And I frankly don't care because I'm not planning on staying in the hospital. And the worst was when there were 4 residents all in their white jackets, and they were taking the place of our primary care physician, because the primary care physician stayed in his office. He didn't come to the hospital. And so these 4 residents came in, with all their clipboards and everything. And I was sitting down and they were standing up above me, and they weren't talking to me. They were talking to each other. It almost sounded like they were trying to impress each other with, well, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and we should do this. We had been taught that OxyContin was bad because some of the healing that he needed to do was on the same pathway as OxyContin, and you couldn't do both. And so he had just spent a month getting off OxyContin. And that was one of the things they had in their clipboard, is they were going to start him on some kind of new codeine regimen. And, and I'm just sitting there, not even able to say anything. And finally I said a little prayer, and I sat up a little straighter, and I looked at them and I told them what we were trying to do. And then we changed places, and they just sat and looked at me dumbfounded. They had absolutely nothing to say. And then, and this relates to what you just said, Dee, after they left, a little while later, the DC, one of the doctors, the DC, he came back, a doctor of chiropractic. He didn't stand over me, he sat by me. And he said, I want to know more about what you have done down there in California and in Mexico. And so I told him, and he just said, that's amazing. And then he said, I wish our hospital had more to offer you. We don't at this time, but I hope we do in the future.
Yes. I think that is, I think some places are moving that direction, but I don't know that that's the norm yet. And the other thing is listening to the patient. I remember hearing so many of the older doctors saying they really had to listen to the patient, do the exam. This was before they were doing tons of tests. I mean, they would do blood work, urinalysis, all that. And there's so many things they can rely on now. But often they could tell by hearing what the patient had to say. And I think people are stressed. This is, I am getting a notification that there's a storm coming from a weatherman.
No one outside. Marcia, did you have a thought?
No, I was just shaking my head in agreement with what was being said. I just wish that our medical practitioners, I was liking what she was saying about listening. And the older doctors, and my GP is that kind of doctor. You can talk to him for an hour, and he knows, like, if I come in, I only go there for annual checkups, and I'll go if there's something that I can't quite figure out. He's a good diagnostician, so he'll diagnose, but he knows never to prescribe anything for me because he knows I just won't do it. He knows I have a different answer. So we'll just have a conversation, which is terrific. That's, for me, that's the value of a doctor, someone who you can talk with, who will help you figure out what's going on, and then either give you the advice you need or let you listen to your heart, let you listen to your instinct, and or what go down that road. And
my grandson came in from playing, he's a tall, thin kid, way thin. And he came in from playing basketball this one day, and he could hardly breathe. It was like he was having a heart attack. The kid is 15. And I mean, he's not having a heart attack, but it was just, there was something really bad going on. So we calmed him down and we did some things at home that we could try first, and it wasn't working. And so we took him, I took him into the emergency room. The mom had just had a foot operation and she couldn't move or drive. So I took him there, and then his dad came in. And so we just stayed with him in the hospital there in the emergency room. And it was a really interesting experience. They had a lot of really, really fancy equipment that they did a lot of diagnostics, which was very nice. And then they had this great big tall movable standing computer that they inputted, you know, so everybody, the doctor or nurse, whoever came in, they inputted what was going on with Dallin. And so when the next person came in, because we were there for hours, when the next person came in, then all they had to do was look at the computer, and they could see what had been done, and could figure out what to do next. And I was really impressed with that. And I was impressed with his gurney, that he could stay on the gurney and they could just roll it out. And then when they brought it in again, he's right on the gurney, and they plugged it in. So whatever was going on in the gurney, now it's plugged into the wall. I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff happening. But also what struck me is they were looking at the computer. They weren't really looking at Dallin, and they weren't really asking him and talking to him. It seemed to me that they were relying on their technological diagnoses rather than what you're saying, the old doctors were relying on their own expertise.
Yeah, you know, and as you say that, Elaine, it makes me think all of that technology is so valuable,
Mhm.
and yet so is talking to the patient, looking at them. Are they, what's their color like? Are they clammy? Are they cold? Are they hot? You know, all those things that, do they look like they're in pain? You know, so it's getting back to how does our healthcare field balance, find balance in using both.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, I think in their defense too, their limited amount of time they can spend with a patient on an office visit, or if they're in the hospital. I mean, I still think they're some of the hardest working people on earth. And, you know, I appreciate that so much.
Especially with all the paperwork nowadays.
Yes, that there is so much more of that they're demanded to do. So,
Is there a fair amount of nurse doctor interaction? Because the nurse is talking to the patient, then the doctor comes in, then a doctor is talking. Is there some interaction there?
you know, there
Does it depend?
is, and not having been in the hospital setting for a long time, um, I think there still is. In the old days, there was a lot. I mean, you know, whatever doctor came, the nurse, whoever was in charge, or the head nurse or whatever, would make rounds with the doctor or the resident or whoever. And then, you know, they would do their orders, and that's probably all done electronically now. But those days it was written orders, and, you know, then you'd be calling for clarification if that was needed or whatever. Um, there's got to be, just to keep things moving in the right direction.
We've got a couple of questions. Let's go back to your training for a minute. When you trained, was there any focus of personal development attached to your training? Because you were mentioning that about Nikken, was that with the humans being more on the 5 pillars of health, that it's all designed to help people become more of what they want to be.
I'm trying to remember. I know we had ethics classes, you know, which
Mm,
is somewhat aligned to that, I think, in that it's, I don't know if it would fit into personal development as much as just
mm,
integrity,
mhm.
which is basic to, I think, how we all would like to operate and would like to see others operate out of that. Um, I'm trying to think what else there was. It's been a long time. I mean, I've certainly had a lot of personal development things in other areas that I've pursued, but I love that it's such an important part of Nikken,
Mm.
and um, that that's a value and something that's promoted. And I just that the community and, you know, meetings like this, other webinars, other training sessions, all of that, the community and the support that is offered and that I've certainly experienced, and I think most of us have, is just incredible. The encouragement to ask questions, the encouragement to ask for help,
Yeah.
and that is ongoing.
Lorraine, do you have a question or a thought?
Yeah, I posed that question because I'm thinking back when I trained, it was all theory and from a book, it was from textbook, and being very young, you know, in your late teens and early 20s, you don't really have a self image of a confident person. So in looking back, I didn't get any of that personal development. It was only in the last 20, 30 years that, as you say, Dee, you were looking at other ways of finding who you really are. And it was very notable. Just I remember working back in the 80s, and one of the psych nurses were giving a life skills course, learning how to just get up out of bed, take responsibility for yourself, getting clean, making meals, well, whatever the life. And it was an eye opener then. I mean, here I am, an adult. I'm in my, you know, middle age, and all of a sudden somebody's telling me, giving me a life skills course, and and since then I've been looking at other venues to look at personal development. But when a young person that has, you know, I mean, maybe now these young people have a lot more self-confidence and they have experienced more. But when I came off the farm and into the psychiatric hospital, uh, I mean, I could hardly write my name and feel comfortable saying my name. And so it was really a devastating thing. And it wasn't until the last 20 to 30 years is that I've really been taking courses and involving myself with personal development. And of course, with Nikken, it just completely, I mean, it's day and night, absolutely day and night. So that's why I proposed that question.
No, I understand that. And I think it's also the confidence building that happens as we go through life. You know, I think it seems like so many of our young people have almost an overabundance of confidence. And yet I wonder if that's really the case, or if that is a way they have learned to put themselves to the forefront. But they're, you know, just hearing grandkids and some things they're doing in school and all of that, they're learning some of those confidence building skills as they're going along, maybe in a deeper way than our generation did.
I hope.
I don't know. I mean, but I guess the exciting part of life is, if we want we can continue to learn always. And I just love that part. You know, there's so much wonderful stuff to grasp and to understand and to know. I can't imagine being bored ever.
Well, you sure embody that, Dee.
Oh, thank
Patty
you.
Jane, did you have something to add? You're okay?
I'm okay, and I'm blown away, Dee. Thank you so much.
I
You
think
look-
we're going to
I
end
watched
on
you
that.
look for that right wording so carefully, and you are beautifully expressing so much of what we
Yeah.
live with.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that sense of balance and the sense of forward motion, you know, that in both worlds, you know, still in nursing, people still go into nursing nowadays because they want to help people. And you know, and people can also go into Nikken for the tax benefits, as you mentioned, or to help people. And so I think people are just trying to come at helping people from what seems like two different directions. Hopefully in the future, these will join together,
Well,
maybe a little better than they are now.
yeah, and I think you know, I saw it as an avenue to do both, because I didn't want to continue working 50 hours a week until I was 90 years old, you know. So this was 7 years ago when I retired from that. This was a way to continue to help people, to continue to learn, and to continue to have additional income.
Wow. And have balance at the same time.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for your good thoughts and your good comments. I can just tell the thinking processes that are just going on today. And I was looking a little too worried at the beginning. So Hattie Jane was reminding me to smile. And so I'll remember all of you to go and find someone to smile at, because it will raise your energy and it will raise theirs. So we'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks, Dee.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank